Welcome to the Best Business Podcast, the podcast for established marketers, entrepreneurs, and CEOs, the ones who want to join me in my mission to create 200 new multimillionaires who solve world problems with entrepreneurship. If that's you, then this podcast was created to give you access to the tools, training, strategies, and tactics you need to achieve multiple seven-figure profits as soon as possible. This world needs the best business you can build, so please get ready, open your mind, believe you can do this, and let's build a better world together for future generations. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm Daryl Urbanski as always, and today we're joined by a very special guest. It's someone that I've been extremely impressed with since I first met him at the Titans of Direct Response event in, in Connecticut. First of all, before we get into kind of his business accomplishments, he's actually a wonderful human being. Just from knowing him and being interacted in the same communities, can tell that he really does care about people, that he really listens, that he really does provide the best service that he can, and he's just really out to make a change and a difference in the world. So he's a loving husband and father of two beautiful boys, and it's a real honor to have him on the call today, and I'm myself am excited to have the chance to speak more with him. We've talked a little bit, but never as in depth as we're going to get today. So Ryan Levesque, some of you may know him as the funnel specialist. He's most well known for his survey funnel formula, and just in the last 23 months he's generated over 2.8 million leads, 175,000 customers across 19 different markets, with price points ranging from $49 to $2,000. So, and if you're not impressed by that, before this, he spent nearly 5 years running a $20 million a year China expansion project for financial company AIG with a team of 24 people. And before that, he worked on Wall Street at the prestigious investment banking firm Goldman Sachs. But today he is here to share with us some of what he does with his 8- and 9-figure private clients, as well as lessons he's learned along the way. So Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing, buddy?
Daryl, my man, I'm so pumped to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on here with you.
Yeah, well, no, it's exciting. I mean, you've got a lot of value to give. Obviously, the proof is in the pudding. I didn't even mention teaching at Brown University, and you're just a very competitive person. I want to touch on that at some point in time in the call, because I think it's really important. I mean, if you weren't competitive, you wouldn't have reached as far as you have to achieve the things that you have. But before we even get anywhere started, how did you even get started? Before you were the funnel specialist, before you were able to generate revenue and customers, what seems with relative ease, what were you doing?
That's a really good question. So it's funny. Like probably so many of us who stumble in this world of online marketing and building our own business, the way I arrived here is definitely not something that I ever would have expected. So like you had mentioned, I studied neuroscience at Brown University, and I thought at one point that I was going to go on to medical school, become a neurologist, maybe a neurosurgeon. And what's interesting is that my roommate and best friend from college actually went that path. He's a neurologist today at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, and was one of the most world-renowned neurologists practicing in his specialty today. So he was smart, and I was not so smart, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought, well, I was always interested in business. I was always interested in investing. Story for another day. When I was a kid, I took a $5,000 inheritance. I mentioned to you my grandparents passed away when I was young. I took a $5,000 inheritance and grew it into $85,000 as a kid before I went to college, and that's how I was actually able to pay for college. Fortunately, this was in the roaring 90s when the stock market was just booming. But I went back to that experience when I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool to actually work on Wall Street? So worked on Wall Street, worked for the investment bank, Goldman Sachs, but at the same time had this kind of random other interest that you and I were talking about before the call, which was language. And for me, I know your language was Japanese. For me, my language was Chinese. I was really fascinated with Chinese. And at the time, the reason why I was studying Chinese and neuroscience at the same time was I was fascinated by traditional Chinese medicine and its effect on the brain. And I really wanted to figure out if it was real or not. So that led me to Chinese, and all these kind of random passions and interests combined together when I eventually worked for the insurance company AIG in China. And I was running this massive expansion project, basically, had my dream job. You know what it's like. Japan, cost of living is a little different than China, but I was given an American salary. I had all sorts of benefits. I had house servants. I was living this fat cat expat lifestyle, and I was in my mid-20s at this time, and basically had achieved everything that I thought I wanted to achieve, and had this quarter-life crisis.
Right.
Basically, it was like, this is it. And, I was making the kind of money I wanted to make, and I was living the kind of lifestyle, but I felt empty. It felt like there was, and I wrote this letter to my mom, really embarrassing story. I wrote this letter to my mom, and I told her, it was the longest letter I've ever written in my life. It's about 24 pages, and it was actually typed it out and wrote it to her and sent it to her. I basically said, listen, Mom, I feel like I have this fire in me, and it's this fire that's almost extinguished. And I said, if I don't do something about it now, this fire is going to be burnt out for good, and it's never going to come back. And I get emotional about even talking about it today. But when I was going through this, I knew I wanted to go off on my own and do something. I didn't know what it was. I explored the idea of starting an import-export company out of China. I thought about at one point opening up a McDonald's franchise and getting investors to do that. Did all these things, but none of them seemed right. And then on one trip, decided to take a trip with my wife, and we went to Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia, which is in Borneo. And Borneo is where the orangutans are, and the rainforest, and elephants, and everything like that. And I said, I'm just going to get away from it all and just kind of reflect. And literally, about 10 minutes before we leave our apartment for the airport, I said, I want to download something on my at the time it was my iPod to listen to while we're sitting on the beach, and I want to get an audiobook. And I really didn't know what book to get, and I just on a whim saw a book that had a really cool title. It's a book that we're all familiar with now, but at the time it was very obscure. No one had ever heard about it, and the book was 4 Hour Workweek. And I got it literally maybe months after it had come out, before all the buzz, and I listened to it on the beach of Kota Kinabalu at the Shangri-La, and it changed my world. I mean, it was this paradigm shift, and months afterwards, I just couldn't forget it. So I started reaching out to friends who were making money doing exactly what Tim Ferriss talked about online in the States, and one thing led to another. I started buying courses and how to make money programs. They were shipped to China. Many of them were just beat to shit by the time they arrived at my apartment. And finally, and all of them were garbage. They were all like scams, and I was so frustrated. I was like, I almost had given up. And then I stumbled on someone who became one of the most important mentors in my life, a man by the name of Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Yeah.
And I followed Dr. Glenn's stuff, and we could talk more about the story if it's interesting. But long story short, I used his methodology to launch our first real business, and we took that business from nothing to $25,000 a month within 18 months, and replicated that same process in 3 different markets. And from there, that was the early foundation to what's become my survey funnel formula, what some people know as my ASK formula, which is the formula that you were talking about, responsible for all that success in all the markets that we've entered since then. But that's kind of the path, the early days of what led us from doing something completely different to how we arrived today on this podcast, you and I having this great conversation.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Glenn, because Glenn is such a great guy. I've gone through some of his stuff. I don't know him as well as I'd like to. We've had a couple of conversations. He studied with Ken McCarthy, who's one of my mentors, and so in that way we kind of share a similar background. But so many people that I talk to, they never want to reveal who their mentors were, and I don't know why, if they feel like it makes them less special or something. So I'm actually just glad that you're willing to, because like my mentors, like they've just done you so right. How do you not, sing to the hilltops? And you've really built on that. I mean, he's so proud of you. I know, because you don't know, but I've talked to him about you. But he's already so proud of you, just because it's like what anybody would want. And whether it's you're a mentor or whether you're a father, what you want is to put out your best into the world and have someone take that and improve on it and make it better and just take it as far as it can go. And you're really doing that. So that's awesome. But I know, of course, it wasn't necessarily always easy, or it wasn't always this way. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced? I mean, even just trying to get up and started when you were, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's interesting is the early days were fits and starts. And I'll tell a story that I think will explain this exactly. So this is in 2007, 2008. My wife and I launched our first online business. and it was in a completely random, obscure niche in the jewelry making market. My wife at the time had stumbled on what was then a very new site, brand new to the world, called Etsy.com.
Mm-hmm.
And Etsy at the time, one of the biggest crazes was selling Scrabble tile jewelry. So selling jewelry that was made of Scrabble tiles, and you had crafters around the world that were creating this jewelry and selling it, and it was like hotcakes. It was like the Beanie Baby craze. And my wife and I said, well, we're in China. We have all this inexpensive labor. We could make this into a massive business. Let's do that. Started going down that path and realized that's not what we want to do. It wasn't the lifestyle that we wanted to live. I didn't want to be living in a factory in Guangzhou, China doing this. But we said, you know what? We think there's something here with this market. Why don't we teach people how to make this jewelry? So we came out with a series of tutorials. And originally, at first we struggled, but eventually we started seeing some success. And we're selling, at this time, 4 different jewelry tutorials to make this different type of jewelry. We've taken this business to the 6-figure level, and basically I go to work one day, and I step inside my office, and on my desk is a newspaper, Wall Street Journal Asia edition, and you know what the headline was?
What?
AIG to file for bankruptcy.
Whoa.
This is my company.
Whoa.
And basically it was like, oh crap.
Yeah.
I call my wife up, and this is in the midst of the world financial crisis that hit Bear Stearns, that hit Lehman Brothers, that hit all those firms that so many people will remember. Well, AIG at the time was at risk of folding into bankruptcy, and so I called my wife up and I said, honey, I think it's now. I think it's now or never. Now's the time.
Yeah.
So I draft up my resignation letter to my boss, who's the CEO of our China company, hand it on his desk, and I say, I'm sorry, but I have to go. And I sold everything that I owned, donated most of it to charity, had 2 suitcases, left Shanghai, which is where I lived, moved in with my wife in Hong Kong. And one thing I didn't mention about the story is my wife and I were living in 2 different countries. She was pursuing a PhD at Hong Kong University, and I was in Shanghai, which is where I was based, but I was flying to and from Hong Kong for business like every couple of weeks, so we'd see each other. But she was in a tiny 400-square-foot apartment in Hong Kong.
Right,
I move in with her, and I have nothing, just this, a $450 laptop that I bought from Gateway from Best Buy in the United States. And literally, I kid you not, literally, like a month after I quit my job, the Scrabble tile craze crashes. So not only is it a world financial crisis that the whole financial system crashes, our tiny little market that we're in as well crashes, and we have this moment where we look at each other and we're like, now what?
Yeah.
I just left a 6-figure job. She's making no money as a PhD candidate. She gets like a $500 a month stipend. We're living on nothing, and so we make a decision. We say, you know what? She says, I can wrap up my program early. I can finish up my program. Let's move back to the States, and I'll get a job. I'll get a job so you can do the business full-time, and we can cover our living expenses. So she gets a job as a museum curator in Brownsville, Texas, the poorest city in the United States. We literally live in the poorest zip code in the United States, but it's a historically important border city on the Mexican border. Right. So she moves there, and she gets a job as the curator of the Brownsville Historical Association, and I think her salary was $36,000 a year. And that's what we lived on. We moved into a crappy apartment. We had no furniture. I tell the story how we opened up a corporate bank account, and the gift that you got when you opened the bank account was a free one of those foldable lawn chairs. Okay. Like when you go to like a soccer game and you like, right. we got that. And my wife, as like the consummate negotiator, somehow like negotiated 2 out of them. So we each had one. And so that was our living room furniture. That's it. We had that. We had a TV that we bought for like $5 from the Goodwill. No cable. We just had the old rabbit ears, and we had to jam it in the window. And basically, and we had one car. I drive her to and from work, and every single day in and day out, I worked on building my business. And that's how we took that business that I mentioned, that we went from nothing to $25,000 a month, which was in a gardening market, to that level in 18 months. Once we reached that level, my wife quit her job. We moved to Austin, and the rest is history. That was when we finally kind of figured it out, and from there grew our business into the multi-million-dollar company that it is today.
That is so awesome. Yeah, that's such a good story, and you explained it so well. I was having visceral reactions in certain instances because I've totally been there. I know exactly
Yep.
what you're talking about.
I mean, we had a $200 mattress on the floor. We insisted on buying. We went to the mattress store, Daryl, and I remember the store. I remember the store clerk, and we basically walked in. And we said, "What's the cheapest mattress that you have? Like the cheapest?" And we wanted new. Like that was the one thing we didn't want to like take a risk on. Like a used. We want a new mattress, and he's like, you have to go way in the back, like the secret room. It's like, well, this was discontinued about 4.5 years ago, but I'll give it to you for $200. And we're like, sold. The thing was like, I mean, it was harder than if you remember mattresses from college.
Yep.
It was harder than that. It was terrible. We put that thing on the floor, had our 2 lawn chairs, and that was our life for over a year. So I tell that story because people see our company today, they see, they hear this podcast and they think, well, you must have been handed everything on a silver spoon in your mouth.
Right.
No, I was a working class kid. I worked my way through college, and this is what it takes. This is really what it takes. And every entrepreneur that I've spoken to uses what another mentor of mine, I believe someone that you have studied and followed as well, what our good friend Perry Marshall likes to say, your bologna sandwich and ramen noodle days.
That's right. Yeah, my buddy, we used to call it roof and ramen. That's what I did an interview with him, Dan Fagella. I did an interview with him, but we were like, it was our roof and ramen days. As long as we have a roof and as long as we have ramen so we don't die, we're good. Like, that's it. That's it. It's balls to the wall, get this thing up and running.
Yep. Yeah, man, that's it. And I just have to give a shout out to my wife. I'm just so fortunate that I'm married to someone who believed in what we were doing enough to say, let's take a flyer on it, and if it doesn't work out, we'll figure it out.
Yep.
It's the early days. Now it's nice to look back and kind of remember them fondly. But at the time, I'll tell you what, that forced poverty, right,
Yep.
where we forced ourselves to live on very little. I could have gone out and gotten a job, but we said, you know what, let's cut our living expenses to as small as they are, and let's make our focus growing this business. That makes you hungry. That makes you we talk about competition at the beginning of the call. You don't want to be in that situation for very long. So it lights a fire under your butt to make something happen.
Yep.
So yeah.
And I think that's an important part to segue into is like, I have a martial arts background, and one of the things that I learned that was really eye-opening for me, and being fortunate enough to be able to train with world champions and Olympians, was that a lot of these guys, they have the mentality that, you don't show up at a world championship and then become ordained world champion. You are the world champion when you show up to that competition. So
Right.
it's all in the preparation. It's all in the habits. It's all in, like, when you show up, if you're going to go and try and win a gold medal for judo or whatever, when you show up, you've got the best day-to-day routine, the best coaches, the best training partners. Like, your life is like optimized for performing this function. And when you've got when you're trying to grow a business, and like you need to be hungry, you need to be lean, you need to be frugal, you need to be counting pennies, you need to be on your game, you need to be on your grind. And that's where I have something I like to say is don't betray the habits that got you where you are, because
Yep.
that's something that that's why I say nothing fails like success, right? Because you work so hard and then you get successful, and then you kind of get bolder, or you relax, I guess. But it's
And I
because
think you bring up such a good point. And I think what you're doing here by doing this podcast, this interview series, is so helpful. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So often we look to our models of success, and whoever pick a business icon that's someone that you look up to. Who is someone that a name that comes to mind?
that I look up as far as business success, that would
Someone that you look to is. Sorry?
probably be Jermaine Griggs. He's like my best friend, and the guy is he's just a ninja. He just added, literally, in the last week, he just added, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but whatever. He just added like 1,500 people in 1 week, 1,500 people to his 37 a month continuity program that had 3 upsells on it, each averaging $80 with like
Wow.
a 40% uptake rate the whole way. And And now it's going to be an evergreen thing. Like the guy's anyways.
Yeah, he's really sharp. I've heard Jermaine speak. I don't know him personally like you do. He's a super sharp guy.
So sharp.
Enjoyed his House Hunters episode on HGTV.
Yeah.
So shout out to him there. Yeah, don't think we spy on our peers like that. No, that was really cool. No, but so whether it's Jermaine Griggs or say someone like Mark Cuban or someone who's more in the public eye that everyone would be familiar with. You look at someone like Mark Cuban. The biggest mistake that I see people make is that you look at the way Mark Cuban handles himself now, and you say that's what's going to make me successful.
Right.
You need to look at what Mark Cuban was doing 25 years ago when he was in the same situation than you're in right now. And that's the reason why I wanted to go through that a little bit of that story. And I know it took a little bit longer than maybe we might have liked, but I think it's important to understand those things. Those details matter. The only time that my wife and I went out to eat was Star's Drive-Thru. It's a little drive-through burger chain, and the only day that we went out to eat, Thursdays, because on Thursdays they had dollar hamburgers, and so we would stock up. I'd get 2 hamburgers, she'd get 1, and if we were really feeling like splurging, she'd get fries, or we'd get fries. And I'd get another burger for the next day at lunch. Well, she was at work, and I'd just warm it up, on the stove. Those details, as seeming, superfluous or unnecessary, that matters. If you're going out and having $40, $50 sushi dinners while you're going through your lean days, your priorities aren't right, and you're going to struggle. And I've seen it. A lot of my friends, especially friends who are successful, they reach this level of success and they say, you know what, I'm going to leave my corporate job, I'm going to leave my law career, I'm going to leave my career in medicine and start from the ground up, and they never want to leave the lifestyle stuff behind.
Right.
You get attuned and accustomed to a certain lifestyle. So I have this belief that if you're constantly growing your business, the secret is living on last year's salary. So in other words, if you made $100,000 last year and $250,000 this year, just live as if you made $100,000 this year, and you'll be fine. And if you constantly grow your business and you're living based on the money that you made a year prior, you're going to be set. The biggest mistake people make, and I even see myself fall into this temptation, is you have a great year, you have a great series of years, and you want to start upgrading everything.
Yep.
Yeah. And then before you know it, it puts all this pressure on you. And then to your quote, which I think is brilliant, you betray, how did you phrase it? You betray the habits that got you to where you are?
Yeah, never betray the habits that got you where you are.
Yeah, so that frugality, that focus, that determination, you lose all that, and, you got to remember, there's some guy behind you who's exactly where you were 3, 4, 5 years ago, who's just as hungry as you were then, who wants to be you. Yeah. And, it's the reason why longevity in our business, longevity and success, I feel like is so rare. Yeah. So I try to remind myself of these things, and I'm no saint, and I make all the same mistakes that everybody else does. I try to remind myself of these things because I feel like this mindset stuff is really important, and it's I've learned a lot of this from our mentors, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's true. I mean, the wrong mentality you'll psych yourself out. Again, going back to martial arts, you see guys lose matches before the match even begins because the other guy defeats them psychologically. He establishes that he's alpha, or and then the guy the whole time he's playing defensive. He's not even it's the mental aspect is a huge component of it because you'll self-sabotage. But then beyond that, there's a skill set. There's a skill set, mindset, and environment. And those 3 components can help anyone be successful. And one of the things that you alluded to is that you were working on your skill set. I mean, you already kind of had the mindset because you'd accomplished some great things. Maybe you didn't, and maybe that was something that kind of evolved with your mentorship. But at the same time, you still were really focused on developing the skill set. And once you have the skill set, like you said, it's the same formula you've done over and over and over again. Because so many people think my business is different and X, Y, Z. But in a lot of instances, there might be little nuances, but for the most part, the formula works, doesn't it?
It's absolutely right. And, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in the last few years is the importance of establishing your category of one. And what I mean by that is ask yourself the question, what real estate, whether that's virtual or physical, what space in the market can you own where you can legitimately say you are the best in the world at that thing? And I'll give you an example for me. It's debatable whether or not I'm the best sales funnel expert in the world. I am probably not. I'm probably not even in the top 10, maybe not even in the top 100. People might say that I am, but that's debatable until, the cows go home. But there's one thing that's not debatable. I am the number one expert in the world at building a survey funnel style funnel.
Correct.
That full stop, end of story. I own that space.
Yep.
I own that real estate in someone's mind. If you are thinking about, and I know this about you, if someone approaches you and say, hey, Daryl, who's the guy that you'd reach out to if I wanted to build like a survey style sales funnel?
Right. Oh yeah, hands down, it'd be you.
I'm the guy.
Yep.
And that's not by default. That's not just by accident. That's not by happenstance. That's by design.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do from a practical standpoint is take inventory of all the stuff that you do, all the stuff that you work on, all the stuff that you sell, all the service offerings, and what is it that you do better than anybody else? Now, when I ask people this question, the temptation is to go broader, more broad than is comfortable. What's interesting is that that doesn't have to be the only thing that you do, but it becomes part of your USP.
Right.
And as the private clients that I work with know, the survey style funnel is only one knife in my Swiss Army knife, right? That's only one tool that I've got in my toolkit. I've got a whole bunch, but publicly, I own that space in someone's mind. Versus back in the day when I was a little bit less clear on my positioning, and I was a marketing expert, a sales funnel consultant. I wasn't the clear and obvious choice in cases where it was a slam dunk. And so that was an important lesson for me to learn. And when I did that, when I niched down what I was doing and I made my entire focus of my business on this one thing, the business exploded.
Right.
And our training business exploded, our implementation business exploded, our consulting, our coaching, everything, because it was all built around this one big idea. And one of the movies that inspired me to start thinking like this, you might appreciate this with your background in Japan. Have you ever seen the documentary Euro Dreams of Sushi?
No.
Oh, you have to watch it. So it's a documentary about a sushi chef. His name is Euro, and he has a 3-star Michelin restaurant, so the highest Michelin rating that you can get in the world. And this restaurant, is in the basement of a Subway.
Right. Yeah, that's
and he takes pride as being the best sushi chef in the world, to the point that his son, who's I believe in his 60s now, is still his apprentice.
Right.
He is still apprenticing under him. And he takes every decision with takes care of every decision from where each guest is going to sit to ensure the optimal dining experience, to ensure every slice of the knife is perfect based on that cut and that piece of fish. His goal is near perfection in this tiny little infinitesimally narrow scope of life, and he's achieved that pinnacle of success. And so that inch wide, mile deep focus, I think, is something that is definitely, I would attribute a lot of to the extent that I've been successful, that's been a big part of it. And a lot of people that I've modeled have also taken that same approach.
No, I think that's and it reminded me, because you're right, and that's something that, in some ways, that mentality might be a little bit lost in the Western world. Because I remember I was working at Shinsei Bank in Tokyo as a consultant, was outside consulting. And they were having this big conference. I was down at the headquarters, and I'd showed up, and there was all these people here. And I remember asking, like, what's going on? Like, what's the big deal today? And they said that there was like a conference, and there's people coming in from all the branches into Shinsei Bank. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. Like, what's going on? Like, what's the thing? And I forget the guy's name, but he was speaking, and he'd been a janitor for like 50 years or something like that, 55 years, somewhere there, just under 60. And in my head, I was kind of arrogant, because in my head I'm like, so what? Like, he cleans, so he cleans, like, he mops floors, cleans toilets. Like, that was, you know what I mean? I'm like, I put him, I put him on a tier. I put him in a hierarchy. But for them, no. He is a great man that has mastered his craft, and the type of perspective you would have after 50 years of doing a job, and to do it still, like, at an elite level, like, to share that with others. Like, so that's that pride in what you do, and just owning it, and just owning your role, or what you want to do for the world. And not like for him, he doesn't care about making 6, 7, 8, 9 figures a year, right? He just was a janitor, and for whatever reason, very, very passionate about it, and did it for years and years and years. And that mentality, even like you said, the specialization, I think that's something that's lost in a lot of people, because there's a shiny object syndrome where people want to either keep up with the Joneses, or that shiny thing, or the next shiny thing. Whereas there's a lot to be said for just putting your stake in the ground and just going for it, and just being the best at whatever you decide you want to be the best at. I think
Absolutely. No, I could not agree with you more. I think mastery is a skill that is widely lost. Mastering what it is that we do. And I think the reason why, especially in the West, is that there's an appreciation for the new, the novel, doing something different, doing something, that you haven't done before. But the few people that do the same thing and reach, like you said, that elite, that pinnacle of success, that is where the real opportunity is. Ask yourself, who makes a bigger salary? Is it the general practitioner that you go to see when you go to the doctor? Or is it the brain surgeon that operates in the Mayo Clinic in the Miami branch who only does one type of parietal lobe brain surgery? One of those doctors makes about $2 million a year. The other one makes about $100,000 a year. Who do you want to be? The one who's constantly seeing new and novel things, or the one who does the same thing every single day, but is the best in the world?
Right.
And that just turns out to be what your priorities are. I made a conscious decision that I wanted to be the best in the world at something, and I took inventory of what it is that I was doing, what was the combination of, based on my experience, my natural skill set, what that thing is, and for better or worse, this is what it is. And it's something that I enjoy. There's an intrinsic enjoyment that you get when you do something at an elite level, and you focus on just the activity of it rather than the result. Focusing on the activity of making that sushi, every single step along the way, doing every step as well as you can, that's going to lead to a superior product rather than being fixated on the product itself and not worrying about the process.
Yep.
So, there's a lot. This is deep stuff, and I know maybe we weren't planning on covering it, but I think it's one of these things that, for me, when I started shifting my mind towards this, it definitely, I always thought I wanted to be a generalist because I'm like you. I know you have a lot of different interests, and I was the same way, and I realized that was a path to, that's the classic jack of all trades, master of none.
Right. No, it's hands down. There's a book called The Discipline of Market Leaders, and in it they plead the case that after studying all the best performing companies in every category, that every company that has made it and survived, whether it's recessions or depressions or whatever, but the ones that are leading the pack, so to speak, are specialized in either operations, they're specialized either in product, or they're specialized in understanding their customers better than anyone else. And so it's one of those, and there's no one who gets to the top that's kind of like good at all things. That just doesn't exist.
Right.
Not at all. There's something I wanted to say. Oh, right. When you talk about mastery, there's a quote about mastery. I forget who said it, but they were like, do it until it becomes dull, and then do it until it becomes beautiful. And I think that's a really good way to look at mastery. So what are some of the things that you did to master your craft? Like, what are some of the things that you've had to master to build the business and to become the man that you've become today and been able to do what you do for clients?
Well, I think one thing, if people, even though publicly I'm positioned as the expert in building survey-style funnels, if people who work with me privately, if you were to ask them, what's Ryan's superpower? The one thing that they'll say is, I've never met anybody who can write word-perfect copy out of his mouth, on the fly, verbally, perfect the first time. Now, whenever I say that, it always creates a ton of anxiety because it inevitably puts me on the spot to the comedian. All right, well, be funny, tell a joke.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. It happens in the context of a call. But how do you derive that? Well, it's just like your martial arts example. You got to get your reps in. So I don't know how many hundreds, or maybe at this point thousands of hours I've spent on the phone with clients, coming up with offers, coming up with hooks, wordsmithing copy right there on the fly. But I've reached a point now where I go into this mode where it's like the surroundings shut off, and I can see the words being typed out in front of me on a Word document and just articulate it verbally. And we record all of our calls, and that becomes our copy. How do you get that? That's a classic 10,000 hour thing. Right. In my early days, it was studying, another mentor that I never had the pleasure of meeting. He passed away before I entered in our world, but I credit him to, largely for my success as a copywriter, is Gary Halbert. And I know you've studied Gary's stuff. Yeah. And I remember my early days in Shanghai when my wife was getting her PhD in Hong Kong. I'd come home to an empty apartment. And I don't know if this is true in Japan, but in China, McDonald's does delivery on scooters.
Oh.
Did they have that in Japan?
I don't know. I never found out, but
so I was like, I became like, I swear to God, like I was responsible for McDonald's, like, banner year in 2007, because I was ordering McDonald's every single night. I walked from my office. It was a 10-minute walk from my office to our apartment. I'd walk home. I'd order McDonald's. The delivery guy knew me by name. He'd come in, drop off my delivery, and I'd be eating hamburgers and fries, and I'd be hand copying out Halbert's letters.
Right.
And I have notebooks.
Yes, I've done that.
Yeah, notebooks full of this, and it's tedious and it's tiresome, and it's definitely one of those cases where it's like, all right, what's the point? Do it until it's dull, and then do it again until it's beautiful. Or I butchered your great
perfect.
quote, but that's exactly what it was like. It was like writing it down until finally this way of communicating became internalized. And so, talking about specific action that got me to where I am today. Well, number one, it was definitely spending the 10,000 hours to become the best copywriter that I can. And that copy, by the way, translates itself across all media. So verbally, in writing, in video, across everything. It's just a form of communication. And for me, having an academic background, and I know you can appreciate this because you have a lot of the same interests that I do, I had to unlearn. I had to unlearn, using words like fecundity and assiduous and just not speaking like that and speaking just in plain English. Me to you, just how we communicate. Because when you learn how to write in a stilted academic way, it's just not, it doesn't resonate with people. It's too highbrow. And it's not about being condescending or anything like that. It's just that it's not the effective way to communicate. So I had to unlearn that entire academic way of writing and then relearn this much more me to you, sort of letter style of writing. But once that was internalized, that was definitely, that's an evergreen skill that if you start on this path today or 30 years from now, you'll never go hungry. Because as long as human beings use words to communicate with each other, doesn't matter if it's verbal, video, in writing, as a skilled copywriter, and when I say skilled, I mean very skilled, operating at the elite level, you will never be wanting for anything.
Got it. Yeah, and that's powerful lesson. Yeah, I did that too. I wrote those out with the Halbert letters, and something that ties in. There's one of my mentors I'm trying to get on to do a call, and he just posted one of his students. He produces world champions like there's no it's honestly it's easy for it's frustrating, but you get it because one of the videos that he just posted recently was a student who just did 1,000 reps in a row of a certain technique. And it was the video. It was like a 5-second video just going, I just finished my first 1,000 reps. I've never done 1,000 of anything before. I'm tired, but I feel great, and I can't wait to do 2,000. By the end of the day, she'd done 3,000 reps. And a buddy of mine, DJ Jackson, he won, and this is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he won the World Championships as a blue belt in gi and no gi, which is like with the uniform, without it. And then he went back the next year, and then he won the World Championships as a purple belt, the next level up, in gi and no gi. And then he went back the next year and won the World Championships again as a brown belt in gi and no gi. And he went back the next year and won as a black belt. He won gold in no gi and bronze in gi. And I remember sitting down talking to him, being like, what's your strategy? And he was telling me how he'll go compete, he'll analyze his game, he'll figure out his 3 biggest weaknesses, and he'll drill that 10,000 times before the end of the month. And it's like that's just how he did it again and again and again. So we were talking about this is the old school 10,000 hours type thing. I think there's hard. It's energy, time, focus, and effort. So
you got to get your reps in. Is what it comes down to. If you're going to become a world-class basketball player and you want to shoot 90% from the free throw line, what's the secret? Is it some magic bullet that someone's going to say, oh, just flip your wrist like this and you'll be fine? No. Right. The answer is you got to get your reps in. You got to get your shots in the gym, and whatever that is in your business, you got to get your reps in. If it's consulting, how do you become the best consultant in the world? And you're getting on the phone with people. You practice, right? You get on the phone with more people. You try to think on the fly. The more you do that, the better you get at it. If it's writing copy, it's writing copy. Jerry Seinfeld, if you ask, if you've ever studied Jerry Seinfeld and what led to his success, he says, what's been most responsible for my success? He says 2 words: just write. Just write. Every single day, he made it a point to just write, to write jokes. The more jokes you write, you're going to have a lot of duds in there. But the more duds you have, the more winners are going to be in there as well.
Right. Right, right, right. No, I love that. I love that. So copywriting really is kind of the one skill that you had to master in order to help grow and grow and be successful and scale your business. How does copywriting fit in with your surveys that you do?
Well, what's interesting is that a survey alone is not very exciting. It's not sexy, right? If you bring up the word survey I mean, I'm a married man, but imagine if you brought up a survey at a cocktail party, you probably would not attract very many members of the opposite sex. I mean, it's as boring as it gets. And we have all this negative connotation about surveys as well. You think about, the phone calls you get at the dinner table when it's, hi, this is, the auto shop, and we're just calling to see, if you'd be willing to take a 5-minute customer appreciation survey to see like how your car. And you're just like, you've mentally hung up that phone before like words have even exited the woman's mouth, right?
Right,
So that's a survey. So how do you get people to take a survey? Well,
right.
that's where persuasion comes in. And one of the principles that I talk about and that I teach is how to appeal to your prospect's self-discovery. So people, what's your prospect's favorite subject? It's not hunting, it's not fishing, it's not gardening, it's not baseball, basketball, it's not business development. What is it? It's them.
Hmm.
Everybody's favorite subject is themselves. If I can open up, unlock something that you didn't know about yourself, and it can change your life, you're going to want to know what that is. So if you can frame the questions that you're asking, and the way you do this online is through a survey. If you can frame the questions that you might ask your prospects as a way that it appeals to their self-interest and to their sense of self-discovery, people will want to not only answer those questions, but they will do anything in their power to find out the results.
Right, right, right. Yeah, it's that's an old sales thing where you can't motivate someone to do something they don't want, but if you show them how to get what they want, they'll move a mountain or
Right,
something like that.
exactly.
So, got it.
Exactly.
Got it, got it,
Yeah, so
got it.
there's a lot of persuasion that's involved, and at the same time, the beauty of it is it's not manipulative because the way we use surveys benefits the customer. So it's a case where this is one of the rare situations that when you use surveys the way that I implement in market after market, it not only benefits you as the merchant because you make more money, it benefits the consumer because it allows you to learn a little bit about the consumer in a way that you can point them to a solution that's a better fit for them than if you were to just try to jam a one-size-fits-all solution down their throat, which is what most marketers do.
Right. Yeah. What do you see kind of the big mistakes that a lot of marketers and entrepreneurs are making in collecting customer data?
Well, I think they're asking the wrong questions. I think, and I talk about this in my upcoming book, Ask, that we all know that gathering customer feedback is important, right? That's self-evident.
Right.
But the questions that people ask when they do that are often flawed. For example, you cannot directly ask someone what they want. Right? There's a famous quote. It's attributed to Henry Ford, and he says, if I would have asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses.
Right.
And the reason why that quote rings so true for people is because it is true. People don't know what they want. And I say there are only two types of information that people can accurately tell you when they don't know what it is that they want, and that's number one, what they don't want, and number two, their past behavior. So you have to ask the right type of questions at the right time to the right people in order to get data that's useful. Otherwise, if you ask people, for example, what it is that you want, you have all sorts of things that happen where people will make up answers to please you as the survey taker.
Right.
And there have been studies about this where people respond differently in laboratory settings because they're trying to please the experimenter or they're saying what they think they should say.
Right.
The same reason why, if you ask, what's the circulation of the National Enquirer? It's one of the largest circulations in the country. Who reads the magazine?
Nobody reads it.
Nobody reads it.
No, you're totally right. That's a perfect sense. I remember going back to Glenn. I remember one of his talks. He was talking about focus groups that they used to do. They keep people there for a couple hours, ask them what they like about product XYZ, and then at the end they'd be like, "All right, thank you for coming. Here's your check. Blah blah blah. Oh, also we got notification. You're allowed to take home any of these that you like on your way out. So thank you for participating. Just grab your gift on your way out." And that was the real test, was to see which product people grab, because they'd sit there for 2 hours, 3 hours, and in the focus group setting and what they like and don't like about XYZ. But then when they went to leave and they were told they could grab any of like the 4 or 5 products, but only
Right.
one of them. That was the actual test. So no, exactly. I love it. I love it. Very well articulated.
Excellent, excellent. So listen, Daryl, I know our time is limited. What else should we cover before we have to part ways?
Well, I do want to talk a bit about what you've got going on because I think you've got some great value, and I know you've got, I think there's 4 or 5 different types of surveys that you use, and you've got a book that's coming out too. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about where people can learn more about surveys and about your book, and like if any of this is resonating with them, how do they like what's next? How do I get more of this good info?
Absolutely. Well, I think the best way to dive deeper into this stuff, and we didn't spend too much time talking about the survey side of things, but everything that we talk about was sort of tangential to the thing that's most central and really most critical to my success is asking the right questions at the right time to the right people and then integrating the results of those questions in your marketing. And I ask people, I say, you want to know the secret to going into 19 markets with virtually 100% success? Well, the answer is you take all the guesswork out of the process. How do you take the guesswork out of the process? Well, you ask the right questions to give you the right answers before you take any action. And that's what the book that we have coming out in March of this year, Ask, is all about. The book is called Ask, and the subtitle is The Counterintuitive Online Formula to Discover Exactly What Your Customers Want to Buy, Create a Mass of Raving Fans, and take any business to the next level. And the book is basically broken up into 2 parts. The first part is the story of how the methodology came about. And we talked about a few of the twists and turns from my own personal story, but there's some things in there that we didn't talk about, like the fact that in 2012 I actually almost died. I had a near-death experience.
Whoa.
I was in the hospital in the ICU, and it took me reaching that point for this formula to be articulated in the way it is. The second half of the book is all about the detailed methodology. It's all about what you were starting to talk about, those 4 key surveys, what surveys you use, at what points in your sales process. And this book, what's cool about it is I made a decision, as uncomfortable as it was, to just throw it all out there. What I decided to do was basically reveal my family secret recipe. And I decided not to hold anything back. This isn't one of these books that's a thinly disguised sales letter. My model for this book was Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink. It inspired the title, it inspired the design of the book, and it inspired the contents. So if you're a fan of that style of book that gives you insightful data and information and stories that can lead to actionable changes that you can make in your business, I think you'll really like it. And what I thought would be cool, Daryl, if it's okay with you, is why don't we just do a giveaway? And I can set aside a handful of physical copies of the book, and we can give them away to anybody who might be interested.
Yeah.
And I
Go ahead.
Cool, and I was saying, I think what as far as a how to do that, why don't we do this? We have, I know we set up a special link at askformula.com/BBP, so for Best Business Podcast, just to keep it as simple as possible. So BBP, and when you go to that page, you'll see that the book retails for $24.95. This is a physical book. If you enter the coupon code BBP for Best Business Podcast 2015, BBP 2015, it'll take the book to 100% free, and I'll set aside, let's say, 50 copies. So first come, first serve, 50 physical copies. I'll buy you a copy of the book, and I'll ship it to you for free.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. I actually encourage everyone that listens to this that they should do that. Even if somewhere down the road Ryan tries to sell you something, because I know where he's come from. I know the mentors he's had. I know how they've helped me, and I fully endorse, honestly, sincerely believe in the survey. I mean, everybody knows you need customer feedback to do it, and there's just not a lot of training on how to do it. And so I would really recommend to do it. I've already been thinking I'm going to go to that link and get the book myself, because I want to know. I want to know your survey method, Ryan. I want to know your secrets. So, yeah, but that's, I mean, this podcast was created to help, this podcast is to help create 200 new multimillionaire business owners. And you're not going to do that if you have no connection to your clients, customers. And I really, really like the track record of, not even you. I mean, that was Glenn's first thing when he started touting himself as like a marketing specialist, is that he went into 17 niches, all profitable right off the hop. I mean, this sort of thing, it's not fake. It's real, and it's a formula, and it just works. And I definitely think that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Just because you may know how to do a survey, and you think like that's an expert tool, you may not know how to use that tool expertly. So please, if this is something, if it fits in with what you're doing, I definitely think this is a great offer. Please go check out the book and get yourself a copy, or I'm sure it'll be on Amazon and all the other places as well. That's awesome, Ryan. So the website was askformula.com, and you can go there and find out all sorts of information. If you want to take advantage of the special offer, it's askformula.com/BBP for Best Business Podcast, and the coupon code was BBP2015. Ryan, that is awesome. Is there any other place people can reach out to you? Maybe they're not interested in the book, but they want to ask some questions or find out more about what you're doing.
Yeah, if you go to thefunnelspecialist.com, you'll be able to sign up for my free daily marketing tip. I talk about what I'm doing in all the different markets that I'm in, and really spend a lot of time just sort of sharing what we're doing, what's working, what's not working, and there are a number of articles on that site that you can take a look at as well, and that's thefunnelspecialist.com.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And again, people listening, Ryan's the real deal. I mean, you can't fake 2.8 million leads and almost 200,000 new customers. So, again, if anything of this has resonated with you, if any of our guests resonate with you, take action, connect yourself, surround yourself with the right people, because you can't do it alone. There's never been a rich hermit. You can't succeed on your own. I didn't even learn how to tie my shoes on my own. So please take advantage. That's why we're doing these interviews, is to help connect you to good people. So Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. I really value you sharing your story, being willing to be vulnerable and admit things that, I mean, obviously there's nothing wrong with what you went through, but obviously some people, they want to hide. They want to hide their mentors, who their mentors were, and they want to hide the failures and the challenges that they had along the way. And you were really forthcoming with that. And I certainly hope it's benefited everyone listening today.
Daryl, thank you so much, man, for the opportunity to share it. And I truly believe we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and we all have near failure experiences as entrepreneurs. So those are our biggest learning experiences. I'm happy to share them. And I just want to say thanks again for the opportunity to be here and share this with your audience.
Thanks, man. You've reached the end of our interview. Now, first, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate and respect you more than you'll ever know. And now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First, what 3 lessons did you just learn? What 3 aha moments just jumped out at you? Second, what can you implement for yourself and your business in the next 24 hours? Third, what can you give to someone else to help you with, or give them to just do it for you? Whatever it is, remember, taking action is the secret sauce to results. Now, if you think this interview would be helpful for a friend, please give them a link to it. It'll help them, and it'll help me too. I'd also like to invite you to help me find out more about the challenges you're facing, your dreams, your goals, and how I can help you overcome what's holding you back. We both do better when we know better, and your success is my success. So please reach out and interact. You can visit our website, bestbusinesscoach.ca for Canada or California, where I'm from and where I'm living. You're welcome to also try out one of our paid programs. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much every other social media channel you can think of. You should also subscribe to the podcast, and if you're enjoying them, please leave us a nice review. It really helps. That's all for now. Once again, thank you. Take care of yourself, and remember, the world needs the best business you can build. And I believe in you.